Thank you very much. Please have a seat. The jury is now present. They appear to be the 12 people they were supposed to be. Ms. Sorgan, any issues with regard to roll call of the jury?
State waives roll call, Your Honor.
Mr. Sand?
We waive as well, Your Honor.
All right. Members of the jury, you have selected a jury leader who has the jury form. You do? Can you hand it to the bailiff, please? It is my understanding that you have reached a verdict, correct? Okay. Thank you. The court will now have the clerk read the verdict.
State of North Dakota, in District Court, County of Ward, North Central Judicial District. State of North Dakota Plaintiff versus Nichole Rice Defendant. Criminal number 51-2022 CR 00421. Verdict form. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn, find the defendant Nichole Rice not guilty of the information dated at Grand Forks, North Dakota, this 26th day of March 2025.
Is this the jury's verdict? Can you calm down a little bit, please? Is this the jury's verdict? Okay, the juror nodded, the jury leader nodded. Ms. Sorgan, do you wish the jury polled?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Sand, do you wish the jury polled?
No, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you very much for your service. We appreciate the time that you've allotted for this case. You are now excused. My admonition no longer applies to you, so you can talk about this case if you choose to do so, and you can also not talk about the case if you choose to do so. Please rise. Please have a seat. Ms. Rice, you've been found not guilty. You are discharged. Thank you. This hearing is closed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, everybody, there we go. Hey, not guilty. Did I not call it? Not bragging, just saying. I am very happy. I am very, very happy. I don't think the defense was surprised as much as they were just elated and happy. I think it was more relief what you guys saw there. But I mean, maybe there was some surprise there too, because juries can do anything. And it did take 5 hours, so they may have been a little worried. But what a great day for justice. And I know a lot of people on the other side aren't going to see that, but this is the verdict that absolutely had to be delivered in this case. I am so happy that the jury found this verdict, because this is exactly what this case deserved. And those prosecutors should be ashamed, just like the defense attorney said. And this case was not a case. Listen, if she would have been convicted, it would have been a grave, grave, grave miscarriage of justice. It would have been a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous injustice. So I am elated that this verdict occurred. All I could say is just that we don't know what happened here, right? But what I think we can say is what the state alleged happened here, they could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Now there is, again, it is a sad day as well. because remember, there is still a killer out there walking around, whether it was Nichole, whether it was Devin, whether it was someone else, or maybe he's not alive today. But the bottom line is there's a family out there, the Knutson family, who now still doesn't have answers and still is going to be sitting here having to have that uncertainty in their life. And it's sad. It's very sad. This case is sad. And, honestly, the accountability, that family should search for accountability, because accountability begins with that police department. Accountability begins with the failures of that police department to do the basics, to collect phone records, to make this case a priority. And why they didn't in the first place, I have no idea. Why they didn't call the FBI in or do whatever they needed to do when they have a young lady, a college student, who stabbed to death in her apartment. It's beyond me. But that's what happened in this case. And they let it sit for 15 years. And I hope also the show Cold Justice, which I guess is, I believe, an Oxygen Channel show, I think, from what I saw and reviewing it, I hope they also lose some credibility here, because when I watched that show and the way it developed, even when I walked away from their episodes, they didn't have, to me, they very clearly skewed this case towards Nichole, all because of the party stuff. Because the whole way this case went the way it did, if you watch that show, you're kind of understand, and it's kind of significant, which is why these defense attorneys were so upset in their closing arguments, because the case, it was very clearly sitting at a point where you had all these suspects, and you really couldn't say, well, what happened? And again, if you listen to Marty Annell's best friend, who talked to them in the show, he says that he said he did something, that there was something weighing on his heart because of something he did, which raises the potential maybe he did do something in this. But again, I still think it's about what he didn't do and what he thinks in what he did, in the sense that he just takes that screen and doesn't question anything. But in no way, when you walk away from that show, they basically base everything on these alleged statements made at a drunken party, which is like the epitome of hearsay. And then these people go to these people and question them. And of course, it's a TV show and it's years later. So this show was very clearly, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, affecting the memories of these people and slanting the memories of these people. Now, what you expect is that when a prosecutor gets a case like this, it's their job to say, you know what, we're not moving forward. This is not a case. But they move forward. They took it to trial, and they got what they deserve today, a not guilty verdict. And those prosecutors, I hope, are reflecting on what they did in this case, because what they did in this case was wrong. And what we need are prosecutors who are willing, who are willing to take a case to trial. And we also need prosecutors who are willing to dismiss a case when it's not right, or to reject the case and send it back to the police for further investigation. What we don't need is prosecutors going into the court like they did right now, like they did in this case, and trying to do their very best to twist and turn the evidence so that they can try to meet their burden when their burden was never met, wasn't met by a country mile. And I think also the statement that I found, I couldn't believe it. I'm going in the law and crime. I'm going in the court TV. I'm going in to check out all these polls, even here. And I cannot believe the amount of people that watch this case. And literally, it showed the inherent bias that happens when the police and the prosecutors file a case. Because there's no other explanation for people to have watched this case and not just either it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how a trial is supposed to be conducted in the mindset of a jury. These jurors got it. So congratulations and hats off if any of you run into this coverage. Congratulations, hats off. You guys did your job and you understood your job. But the job of a juror is not to presume guilt. It's not to assume guilt. It's not to look at this from a guilty perspective and say, oh, well, she's guilty. She's here. That's what everyone likes to do. And I see it all the time when we're watching these trials. When you enter the courtroom, you are to presume the defendant innocent. And you are to aggressively, as a juror, protect that. Our Constitution tells us to do that. The law tells you to do that. The state, the prosecutors, even judges and defense police officers do everything they can to try to erode the presumption of innocence. They perp walk people. They leak things to the media. They do press conferences and they talk about all this stuff. And the media does a great job of promoting the police as saying, well, if the police have done this, well, there must be something here. And the media never talks about the presumption of innocence. The media never correctly puts that in perspective. But when you walk into a courtroom, that's where it starts. And everything starts from there. So when there's problems with evidence, when there's problems with statements, when things can't be answered, the answer is already there. It's like one of the things my dad told me he used to do at jury selection, he used to ask the jurors just to get across the idea. He'd ask each one of them, right now, no case, you're asked to deliver a verdict. What is your verdict? And some people say, well, I don't know. It says there is one verdict. You know what it is? Not guilty, because you're to presume the defendant innocent. When she walks into that courtroom or he walks into that courtroom, he is presumed innocent under the law. And you cannot find someone guilty until the prosecution removes that presumption of innocence by presenting evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to each and every element of the crime that they're accusing that individual of. And that is forgotten. And it's been forgotten in a case like this. It's forgotten when I see people out here and I see the overwhelming amount of individuals who said, oh, she's guilty. Oh, she's guilty because of this. Oh, well, it's got to be this. Oh, well, then why would they say, no, you're asking the wrong questions, right? If you got to get to the point where you say, well, why would she say, no, we have witnesses who had absolutely butchered facts, material facts to their testimony, like the Glyns. And people were still saying that was compelling testimony, not ignoring all of the issues with it and not applying the fact that the presumption of innocence needed to have been applied to that testimony from the standpoint of saying, okay, what do we have here? Well, we have problems, we have conflicts, and we're resolving the conflicts. And well, we should presume her guilty because, well, why would they come forward in the first place? Well, yeah, why would they come forward? But why would they come forward? And if they are coming forward, why would they not know what year it was? Why would they not know the color of the bathroom? And I want you to go back, on all of you, go back and watch. And I think this will answer a lot of questions about where they got their information from. Go back and watch and look at the bathrobe at a glance. In those pictures, you have to really look closely at the bathrobe to see that it's pink. And it's one of those things like right now there's new MacBook Airs that just came out and everybody always talks about Apple's coloring, right? And you can even look at their regular iPhones, not the Pro models. But if you look at it, in a certain lighting, it looks silver, the new blue MacBook Air. But when the lighting is correct and you're in the room with it, there's a blue tint to it, right? And it would be described as blue. Same thing with this bathrobe. The bathrobe is by appearance, if someone was observing or looking at this or watching this documentary at a glance, they would think, oh, that's a white bathrobe. So they didn't get that from her. They got that from them or from their observation of that documentary. And then it became an embedded thought of what they said. Oh, well, what did she say? The problem is they had it wrong. Because a person that would have been there and actually seen the bathrobe would have known the bathrobe was pink, not white. So that tells you everything you need to know about the testimony and about these witnesses and where they got it from and whose influence was prevalent in here. And it wasn't what they actually heard. It was what they observed because of the documentary team that came in to solve this case. And that's dangerous. This was a case that could have been solved, I'm almost certain. But it wasn't solved because of the incompetence and the laziness of the local police department who handled the investigation. That is not the fault of Nichole Rice. That isn't the fault of the Knutson family. That is the fault of the police. And it isn't really the fault of the prosecutors, except it is the fault of the prosecutors for proceeding forward, knowing that, and not having addressed that and said, we're not going to go forward with this. Not with this type of evidence. I mean, and I thought it was funny that you have this inexperienced, clearly troubled police department, literally, and the prosecutors in their closing argument disparaging the FBI, as if saying, well, that the FBI was not able or shouldn't be trusted. Now, I'm not saying the FBI is on point all the time, because they have their problems too. But the bottom line, what I'm saying is it's ridiculous that this prosecutor would take the position that the FBI's review of this case, because it didn't align with what this documentary team found and what the locals wanted it to be, so that they could proceed forward and say, hey, we have our person. It's alarming to me that was the approach, that it wasn't slow down and let's not proceed here. That's what should have happened. But look, today the justice process worked, because the process of justice took place. The process of justice disposed of a very, 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 very stinky case, very, very poor case, and and I'm so happy it did. So let's take a look at where our poll, speaking of things, where did our poll fall in at? And nobody can take back votes now. So today it moved to 57%. There was 95 votes. So 57% said guilty, 27% said not guilty, and 16% said hung jury. So we can say at least 46 or 44% were at least in the area of saying this wasn't a proven case. So that is a lot better than some of the other polls I found out there, there was nearly over 70 to 75 to 80% of the people in these rooms. Now, I have to assume too that there's probably people that didn't watch the whole case. There's lots of other cases going on right now. So, some people come in and make an assumption, but anybody that watched this case from day 1 to day 7 and said this should be a guilty verdict, you've got to evaluate how you're looking at these cases. You've got to evaluate it, because there's no way that you could come to that conclusion if you were looking at it. Linda M. So let's get into some of the people. I want to see what people are saying in chat. So we're going to go back. We're not going to go back too far, because yesterday I got way behind. So I'll take it back. Let's see here. We'll go. All right, so Lisa says, we'll start at Lisa's at about the 10-minute mark here. So Lisa says the Cold Justice episodes are on YouTube. Yes, they are, although I found them. So Deanie, go watch them. I'm sure the aunt is disappointed, although I think the aunt's probably relieved, because remember, the aunt, I don't know that, I think the aunt was kind of the opinion of, if this is incriminating stuff, so be it. She's going to discuss it. Now, she did make that ridiculous statement on the stand, we need justice for Anita and all this stuff. And it's like, lady, what are you talking about? I mean, please. Like, clearly that told me there might be some inherent bias towards her niece. On the TJ Main YouTube channel, episodes 6, 17, and 18. So I don't know who that is, but I guess maybe it's on there. No, TJ Main is the name of the channel. Okay, thanks. If the police had done their job in the first place, there wouldn't be a killer on the loose. That's exactly correct. And I agree with that, Kate. And Guy Vermectin says people on those channels always think someone got charged. That's right, they do. And that's a problem. Hey, listen, it's not just those channels, Guy Vermectin. It's all over our country. Okay. And it is a problem. And, listen, what we should be doing, it's not that we shouldn't at some point acknowledge the guilt of the individual, but it's that if you start your evaluation of a case from the perspective of guilt and assuming guilt, you're going to miss important things, and things are going to happen that shouldn't. So it is extremely important that when you're evaluating a case as a juror or as a lay citizen, that's we're the 13th juror, because that's what we all are, 13 jurors observing. As we're observing this, that's how we should do it. And it's not because I'm telling you, you say, well, why do you have to do that? Because the Constitution tells you, right? If you don't believe me, go verify in the Constitution. Go verify how the process works. Go Google it and look into it and see exactly go look at the judge's instructions. Go re-listen to the judge's instructions. The judge's instructions are very clear. They tell these jurors this at the beginning and at the end, and it's very, very clear. And having served on a jury, I know they get those instructions and we get those instructions. So, I mean, that's how it should be. And if you really want to evaluate a case well, then that's where it should start. And again, you're not going to be, doesn't mean you're going to come to a different conclusion about the case at the end, but it does mean that you're going to make sure that you're understanding when verdicts like this happen, you understand how we got there. And Georgia Jasper says, agrees with Guyver Mecton. So does Lisa. Now, Kate says, I don't know if any of you have heard of the Yorkshire Ripper, but the police didn't stop until they caught him, even though they had an idiot ringing them saying it was him. I have not heard of that case. I don't know how old that case is. I'll have to look into that. And Miss T. Rex brings up a very good point, says, I feel very sorry for Anita's parents. And yes, I do too. I think it is extremely sad. Kate agrees with us. Lisa says, they did change who they were searching for after that phone call, Kate, asking people to see if they recognize the voice. Oh, I see that we're talking about the Yorkshire River. I have to check that case out. I have not checked that out. I believe that sounds like that's maybe over in London or something. So it's not a case I'm familiar with. And Georgia Jasper asked a question. When you ask yourself, what would someone's motive be to lie? Please realize you're not looking at evidence. That's exactly right. You're not. And again, I think one of the things that we have to dispel, right? And I like to dispel this because it is just so inherently not true that we are not on a search for truth when we are in the courtroom. That is not the search for truth. That is an evaluation of the prosecution's truth. Okay. The search for truth is when the police are investigating and the prosecutors are investigating. Some states have prosecutor investigators that work with police in the investigative phase. The search for truth ends when charges are issued. The prosecution loves to frame things as searches for truth. It's not a search for truth at that moment. The prosecution has said they have the truth. What we are doing is we are evaluating the truth that the prosecution claims happened in this case. And we are evaluating that truth against the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, applying the presumption of innocence in that to begin the evaluation process, and evaluating how at the end of the trial has the state removed all reasonable doubts. And it's really simple. They try to make all this stuff, oh, what's a reasonable? They can have you cannot have a reasonable doubt. And a reasonable doubt is just a doubt in a reasonable person's mind, to put it very simply, right? It's a doubt in any of our minds. We look at the case, and unfortunately for prosecutors, they don't get to have one doubt remaining. They don't get to have two doubts remaining. They can have no doubt, no reasonable doubts. Now, that doesn't mean you can be all fair acting, doing crazy. But I mean, if it looks like if they would have said, hey, she would, like I said yesterday, if this case would have been something along the lines, witnesses see her, Nichole Rice, that is, it's a night that they're both at home. Her cell phone data puts her there. It's like 4 a.m. There's nobody else that could have come in and out there. There's no witnesses that sees anybody else going in and out of that apartment. And then Nichole Rice says, well, I left for work at 8 o'clock that morning. And she walks past a window that Anita Knutson's dad would have seen this body in. And then the janitor or the maintenance guy comes by and grabs this window down and says it was hanging out. And he did it like at, moments after this lady would have walked by. That is a case that's proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And then you have a knife with blood on it that's found in the house, and it's a small house, and there's no way this thing could have happened without her hearing. And she says, I have no idea anything like that happened. And then she refuses to go. Now we've got a case that, yeah, there's not doubt there. The defense might raise some suspicions or say there was this guy out on the loose. But the bottom line is there's nobody that's coming in and out. There's nobody that's doing that. And if the only way that if this thing could have happened would have had them both in a small apartment that she should have heard, listen, that's a totally different case than what we have here. Totally different case than what we have here. So you've got to remember, again, that when you approach these cases, when we approach these cases and we're watching them, we approach them from the perspective of evaluating the prosecution's truth. It's not a search for truth. I mean, I think that comes out of like Court TV and Vinnie Politan and all those guys who are prosecutors, right? And again, what's the purpose? You think the purpose of Court TV and, well, law and crime, I can't say they're all prosecutors over there because they seem to be journalists and some are lawyers. But Court TV is a very prosecutor, very judge heavy. A lot of the judges are former prosecutors. And they'll tell you, oh, we're here to watch it. No, they're there to frame justice in the sense of a prosecutor's lens. They're there to tell you it's a search for truth. It's not a search for truth. The search for truth ended at the police investigation. Now, perhaps there should be perhaps that search for truth should continue. And in a case like this, it will have to, and it will either say, well, we'll circle back and say, well, there was, it was this defendant, and she, because of the incompetence and the ineptitude of the police, they just missed the opportunity to convict her because they didn't have the right case at the right time when they took it. Or they proceed on and they could say it was Devin Hall. If I'm Devin Hall, I'm shaking in my boots right now because what should happen is he should be fully vetted and investigated, and the FBI should come in and take over this thing. And they should bring people in, and they should have an interest in making sure that happens. But we are not in a search for truth anymore when we go to trial. We are in an evaluation of the prosecution's truth. That is where we're at. If you don't believe me, read the Constitution, read the judge's instructions. And that is exactly what it is. So let's see here. Kate says, Lisa, yes, they did. I lived in Newcastle. Okay, so I think we're talking about the Yorkshire stuff, which I'm not aware of. Let's see here. So Kate says the police did an awful job on this case, and Anita will likely not get justice because of it. That is true. Lisa says Nichole is going to have to carry this with her the rest of her life. People are, well, locally, I mean, listen, 75% of the people that watch this from home think it is. I'm sure the community there, I mean, I think this is a scenario where at this particular juncture, she should probably just move. Not everyone's going to recognize her in every community she goes to, but if she stays in that small little community there, I can't imagine her ever having peace. And listen, there's nothing that prevents the Knutson family from filing lawsuits on her. I mean, she's still going to work. She's still got opportunity. So this is not the end of the road because, unfortunately, because the standard is lower in civil court, it never made any sense to me, although I guess I kind of understand it. But I think, look, to me, if someone's acquitted in criminal court, that should just, jeopardy should attach to all actions it related to that. But there's an idea, and it's been tested in the appellate courts, and the appellate courts have allowed it to go on to where they say, well, the standard is lesser in civil, so you can go ahead and file a civil suit, and her parents can do that. And then they could try to affect her ability to earn, like they did to O.J. Simpson. They did it to Robert, I think it was, his name was, what the hell was his damn name? The guy that was, he was an actor, Robert Blake, I think is the name. They did it, Robert Blake, so he got acquitted and they sued him. So they've done it to many people out there where they filed wrongful death suits after not guilty verdicts. Linda M says, another Casey Anthony decision. Absolutely not, Linda. No, not even close. Casey Anthony decision. Again, Casey Anthony decision, there was a lot of uncertainty there, but I think what you mean by that is that this jury got it wrong, and that we have a guilty person who got off. In Casey Anthony, I think she had something to do with it. I don't know what level she did. I think her parents did too. I think it was a really terrible situation, but this is not that. This is a case that never should have been brought, this situation. And yeah, Casey Anthony is, because you know what? She's free. So I mean, that's the other thing too, is we have to respect, when juries issue verdicts like this. Yeah, she's right. She's free and she's out there doing things. Now people can choose to take her legal advice or not. She has a unique perspective on the justice system, having been through it. So the next one that I'm trying to stream, obviously Sementilli is going to be continue to be streamed. I'm hoping and I'm awaiting. I do believe it's going to be streamed. I believe it's the Sterner is the way to pronounce it. Case that should be beginning. It's in jury selection right now, so I'm observing it. I'm hoping it's gonna get picked up for certain. I'm pretty certain I've got a media feed that I've got to wait for confirmation on it. But it's a case. It's an old case. It dates back to 2007. And it's really interesting. It's one that I remember following before I ever got into the YouTube aspect, because it was going on for years and it's been featured in the news and everything else. But she allegedly ran her husband over, and there was a house fire, and allegedly, I guess there were issues in the first trial in regards to the fact that her defense did not get an arson investigator, and it appears that the fire that was set at the house was an arson. And her defense attorney, who's now a prosecutor, a lead prosecutor for one of the counties there close by to where she's being tried, didn't do his job right. Anyways, she got convicted in 2010. She got sentenced to life. 2018, she gets her case reversed. She gets released on a $10,000 bond by a federal judge, and they thought the case was going to go away. Well, now, lo and behold, we have a jailhouse informant, someone who served time with her in prison, who's come forward and now is going to say she confessed. And they've had a reevaluation by a fire expert. They've got new evidence allegedly that they're going to be bringing forward. So after years of litigation and years of pretrial wrangling, they've decided they're going to go forward, and it's in jury selection right now. So what are we in 2025? So literally 18 years later, nearly 15 years after her first trial, she's going on trial again. So it should be a very interesting case to evaluate, to look at, to put through the paces, and closely watch and observe. So that's going to be the next one that I'm going to be looking forward to covering. Hopefully in the next day or two, it'll get started. So that's what's on the books. And then I'm keeping my eye on several of the other ones out there. We'll be continuing to cover Karen Reed's pretrial hearings as we move towards the trial. And I believe there's other one. There's the baseball player out. I believe the case is going to be done in Arizona, but I think the crime happened in Nevada, so it might be a Nevada case. I believe it's Nevada where the actual crime occurred. So I think that one's going to be broadcast out of Nevada. But that one was supposed to have started earlier, and then there's been some pretrial issues. But this is a baseball player who he's a former MLB baseball player who killed his in-laws over money. And the babysitter turned on him. His name's Danny Serafini, and he was actually on Bar Rescue. That's a show that my wife and I love to watch. We haven't watched it much anymore, but we used to watch it every Sunday when it come out. We love that show. And but he was featured on there. His bar was featured on there. Apparently ran into some financial troubles, and then allegedly his wife, and the wife is not yet charged, but allegedly the wife co-signed him going and to go kill her parents so that they could accelerate her inheritance because they were in financial trouble. And apparently, like, her family's all split. Like, her sister thinks she's guilty. She says she's not guilty. They haven't charged her yet because they don't have enough to go. And they've charged the babysitter who allegedly dropped him off at the in-laws house after the wife, who was at the in-laws house, and leaves. And shortly after she leaves, this guy goes in and allegedly kills her parents, all to accelerate their inheritance. Anyways, that's coming up. Some pretrial issues going on with that. So lots of things coming up in here right now. Like I said, in the Sementilli case is going to continue to be one that we're going to cover. And that's a great one, Deanie. I know you like to cover. You haven't been in that one yet, but it's one that that is always is good for interesting trial watching. And it's about to move into, I believe, the final phases here. I think it's going to be done probably in the next 1 to 2 weeks, hopefully. But you never know. That thing seems to figure out ways just to continue to drag on and drag on and drag on. So Lisa says the poll in the other room was 80% and people lost their. I know they did. I'm sure they did. Like, it's insane to me, man. I don't know what people were watching or seeing or thinking, except I do know they approached it from the wrong perspective. Kate says we're civilized in here mostly. Yes, mostly. Well, I think Nikita says I think they came back with the right verdict. Sorry, Anita's family. And Lisa agrees. I mean, that's crazy. The Idaho Four cover? Yes, I am. Truth and Justice. I assume you're talking about the Kohlberger case. Yes, I will be covering that. I know a lot of people are going to be covering that, but I will be covering it. I will try to cover everything that's out there and give a scream out to it. But will it be? I try to determine what case. Like I myself. Sorry if I hit my microphone. I myself, right? I'm obviously human, so I can only like really watch and give my full attention to one case, and then I have the ability to keep myself abreast of the other ones, creating summaries for myself and things of that nature, and watching key parts of it and watching key moments. So whether or not it depends. It just depends on what's going on at that moment. That one I anticipate I'm going to be giving some time and consideration to, because it's a very interesting case, and from the perspective of what the defense will be. Now, the thing is, I really feel like, now I know there's been some things that have come out, but I really think it's a cut and dry case. I mean, I think, but I could be wrong. Again, look at me going there, right? What have I just spent like 20 minutes talking about? But I think it will be a pretty cut and dry case. But like I said, when I walk in, I'm going to walk in presuming Brian Kohlberger innocent, and then we're going to go from there. So yes, it will be covered here. And we'll just have to assess what else is going on at the time on whether or not you're getting me coming into the streams a lot. If I'm not giving myself full attention on it, I'm not going to come in and talk about the case too much, because I want to make sure when I talk about a case, I know what the heck is going on, and I'm not coming in, BS. So Lisa says, we don't even know if Anita remembered to lock the. Well, that's exactly right. That's what I mean. All these things are assumptions that you're not allowed to make. You got to prove it. And that's what I thought was interesting. The state's like, oh, we're going to assume this and assume that. We're going to assume that this lady, Laura Knapp's memory, right, was that she could remember. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, if you ask me when I'm doing something, 10 years ago, even if it was something significant, I'm not going to remember something like the bolts of the door. Now, you go find it in the police report that she very freshly said, yeah, it was locked. Now, that's significant, and you could refresh my memory with it. But if you're going to tell me that cold justice comes down and starts talking, or they ask her this on the witness stand, and the first time she says it is 17 years later, I am not putting any credibility in it. I'm sorry. I'm just not. Kate, I probably wasn't. I don't know how long ago that was, but if it was a long, long time ago, I probably wasn't. Let's see here. Kelly Stevens says, I don't believe this girl woke up in the early morning hours, left her family home, drive to another town and stab her roommate. What was the reason? Nothing. Over fish and alarm clock. Exactly. Again, like I said yesterday, I equate it to the Harrington case, right? The Timmy Harrington case. Harrington case, right? This is a case where I could say I watched that trial, and if I was on that jury, I had enough to vote him guilty. No problem doing it. In that case, because they literally walked him all the way to the door. He's in the apartment. Harrington's right where the car's at. He's seen him jogging away. I mean, the fact the guy got an extra few months out before he was actually arrested and locked up without bond, hey, that was to his benefit, because he had a very good attorney and very good at more in the sense of who he was connected to, right? And because of his word and the weight of his words in that courtroom. So, but this case had no tie-in whatsoever to what would have led to her to be inspired to be like, I'm jumping in the car tonight to go off my roommate. I mean, where was it? You know, it was crazy. Oh, so maybe that's an interesting idea. I'll have to look into that. Nikita says they wanted a conviction, not the truth. Hard to imagine that. I know, but man, that's crazy, isn't it? Like, that's not what you're supposed to do. Like, how prosecutors are not supposed to do that. Like, that's wrong, man. That's so wrong. The idea that these prosecutors valued a conviction of a potentially innocent person for the headlines and the political juice that it would have brought them is absolutely disturbing. Shouldn't happen. Not in our justice system. Oh, absolutely, Deanie Cole Holland. Everybody on that list that's alive can be charged, except for her, because double jeopardy attaches. Now she can still be civilly sued, and that concerns me because civilly it's a lot less. It's a preponderance of evidence. It's like, and could you say by a preponderance of evidence that she could have done this? I mean, you get a civil jury that could say that. And then she's got to testify now. See, previously, this is why they wait on the civil cases. She would be brought in to testify. And as I said, I believe if she would have been put on the witness stand and cross-examined with all of her statements and all of her misstatements and all of her things that she said that didn't match up, a jury could have a very different perspective, especially when the standard is preponderance of evidence. So that's troublesome. Again, I'm of the proponent that jeopardy should attach to all things, not just criminal, but civil as well, because when you take it to a criminal trial, and you're found not guilty, I mean, I understand the standard's much higher, and that's why I'm overruled in this case. I just think it should. I think it should. I mean, if you've had to go through all that's what it should be. Kate says, Kelly, exactly. She had been to a family event, then a bar, then went to a farm. Even at 18, she would have crashed out in her bed. It makes no sense. It just makes no sense, especially because there was no communication. There was no phone calls. There was nothing that would have been the underlying thing that would have said this is why she went there and went into a rage and said, I'm going to go do this. Not to mention that I thought it was funny because they were saying that in the state's closing argument that this wasn't a heat of passion, that would have been, and Cole Justice said the same thing, that would have been those other two guys, that would have been overkill. There would have been overkill in this case. You're talking about that this lady, the allegations are that these roommates were fighting, that she was mad because a fish got killed, and you're telling me that if she's getting angry, she's an uncontrollable anger person, she's taking anger management, and you're telling me that if that anger got unleashed to the degree that she's stabbing this girl, that she's not going to, I mean, that would have been more evidence of guilt if this young lady would have been stabbed 100 times, then you say 2 times. That doesn't. And part of it, if you go into it, the state didn't make this argument, but in Cold Justice, there was an implication that she was a hunter. Somehow she was, hunting animals out there. Well, where the hell's the evidence? And like, what? She's a hunter? Oh, so therefore she just knows how to stab people with knives. I mean, most hunters shoot things with guns. They don't stab things with knives. They're not precision stabbers. She's not some Navy SEAL who comes in and just pop, pop, Makes no sense. Makes no sense. And he is in jail, yes. That's why they were going to have him testify from the jail. So Daybell, I will be streaming Daybell Dini. Absolutely. That is absolutely happening. I'm just, it's being delayed as other cases are because of course she's filing all her legal motions. Oh, you best rest assured when we have a pro se defendant who is going to be taking on the system like she is, that will always end up here as long as there's a stream to put it up here, because I will be watching that one, and I will be making sure, even if I'm involved in another case, that'll be my night streaming. That one I'll be watching and keeping my eyes on, just because I want to see what she's doing. And so far she's advocated for herself. Okay. I mean, she's standing up for herself. She's got the counsel that's helping her. So it should be interesting to see what she comes up with, and then be able to assess her against the other ones out there. Right now, Ty is the best. So that's the standard. That's the bar. And we'll see what she can do. It will be Lisa Boone with a twist because she's representing herself. And Guy Vermectin, I don't either. I think any case that has a jailhouse snitch involved immediately becomes a suspicious case in my mind. But man, prosecutors love them. So there's 2 new trials. Linda Sturmer and Ingolf Turk. Yes, I saw the Ingolf Turk. I wasn't certain because sometimes up there, the concern I have with the Turk case is like when they had the one case that was it was a socialite. They did such a terrible job of providing the coverage in the courtroom. Like the courtroom feed wasn't covering opening statements, wasn't covering this, wasn't covering that. So I'll be evaluating whether or not it meets the standards that I want because I don't like to have chopped up stuff like that. I mean, if we're going to watch the case, we need to see the whole case. And otherwise, we'll catch it in the clips. And maybe I'll put up some clips of sometimes I do that. But if it's going to get the full treatment, I want to see the whole trial. But that one looks interesting. I was watching his pretrial hearing, which wasn't aired. It was just, I've just seen some clips from one of the Boston news agencies. And I think Law and Crime also had a clip on there too, as well, of the hearing. But that one is quite an interesting case. I'm curious to see what his defense is because I feel like it's more of a mitigation defense. That one's going to be more of because I think she was found in a pond outside the house. So I feel like that's going to be more of the state wants it to be the upper level, and they're going to argue that there was some sort of factor, mitigating factor that brings it down and lets him get the opportunity to get 15 or 20 years as opposed to the top, unless he's going to claim full out self-defense. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Yes, it does. Guy Vermectin, and I expect that case is not going to begin until probably the end of April. I mean, because it was insinuated from Aunt Bev that either one or two things was going to happen. Either jury selection happens faster than they expect because they're bringing in an out-of-state jury this time, and if that's the case, then they're probably going to grant the motion to let hopefully the upper court decide, the federal court decide on the issues regarding whether or not the second degree will move forward, or if it takes longer than that, and the opinion is announced, then it's going to begin on the 23rd anyways, or after the 23rd, because that's how long jury selection takes. But I think this is going to be a very, very difficult case for jury selection, so it's going to take some time. And we don't get to see jury selection, so it's not like the Adelson case down there where they had the one local media agency that was actually airing jury selection or airing parts of it. So that was I don't think that's going to happen here. I don't think Bev's going to let that happen. It's confirmation bias. They find one single piece of evidence and voila, guilty. Yep, exactly right. You don't think he did it? Well, like I said, I intentionally keep my mind, try to keep my mind clear of a lot of the speculation things when I know we're going to be going to a trial, because I want to go in like a juror that says, hey, you know what? I want to evaluate the case based on what is presented in court. After, like now, that's why after it goes to the jury, and I already have myself, now I'll dig into things like going into cold justice and stuff like that. Some cases you get exposed to, and there's nothing you can do about that. But if I can avoid the exposure, I like to, because I really want to evaluate these cases from a perspective of not being biased by stuff. We didn't lock our doors as much then in a small town. What got me to conclude reasonable doubt is the not definitively knowing where to screen. Absolutely. That's Hannah B. That's another great point. I mean, the state was all over the point on that, because if that screen's found in the window, I feel like Marty has problems, because then you got to explain, why would Marty not have investigate it further, which again, I feel like the screen was found on the ground, which would indicate that this individual came through or the screen was ripped out, which would not be the way I don't think Nichole Rice would stage anything. It would be more conclusive with someone like Devin going through the screen and whatever happened, if it's like what I think happened, which is that he goes through the screen, it's hanging, he's trying to put it back in, he gets it in or gets it up there and then realizes, oh my God, so he just says, screw it, I'm going to cut this thing to try to get my hand through to pull the window down, starts to do that, and the knife falls on the bed. Because remember, the knife was found open. It wasn't closed. It was open on the bed. So then that would make sense as he's trying to fumble through that, it falls in. So now he gets pissed off because, oh shit, I dropped my knife in there. So what does he do? He rips the screen out and tries to look in there and then can't see it. It's dark, right? And then just says, screw it, and takes off. Because remember, Erman sees him running. And, look, does any of it make sense? No, none of it does. But the guy was probably, as we know, when he was running around doing these crimes, he was high. He was under the influence of stuff. So yeah, none of the judgment makes any sense. He's just in a panic state. And I don't think anybody can really know when you do something like that and your crimes escalate to something like that, it's going to cause you to just be frantically running around doing stupid shit. And that's why people get caught when they do it. Well, I think Guy Vermectin, perhaps maybe the prosecution felt obligated to take this to trial because of the pressure from cold case or whatever it was, or because look, or cold justice, I guess is what it was called. So, I mean, maybe they felt obligated. I don't know. I mean, I feel like to me, prosecutors have really strayed away from their duty. And the duty is not just to convicting people. The duty is to also evaluating cases and keeping cases from going to trial that are not there yet and sending it back. And if that means dismissing the case, that means dismissing the case. If that means never filing the case and sending it back to the police, if that pisses off your police detectives, you know what? That's part of your job. That's being a good prosecutor. That's justice. Justice is not taking a case like this to trial. Wouldn't the state look foolish now bringing Devin to trial? Not really, Deanie. I mean, they could. I mean, I guess it would be an admission, and it would, in one sense, open up the possibility that Nichole could file suit. It's probably why it will never happen. Because remember, what Devin's defense is going to do is they're going to argue Nichole's guilt. You see? And then there's going to be a jury that's going to say she's a likely suspect. So unless they can come with something conclusive of Devin, then you're probably not going to get there because the DNA is worthless. Okay. And unless Devin confesses, we're done. So the only angle you would have in this case would be to take a run at Devin and either come up with a jailhouse confession. And maybe there'll be someone out there that's willing to do that. Many people are sitting in a jail that want to get a good deal, or he confesses, or you get a jailhouse confession and then you do that, or you bring him in and you run the interrogation or the lie detector gamut on him. Bring him in, have a conversation, get him to take the lie detector test and lie to him and tell him that he failed if he didn't fail, and say you failed, and confront him with that and see if he'll confess once you confront him with a failed lie detector test, whether he failed or not. Sometimes people do actually legitimately fail. Can't be used in court, but what can be used in court is if he confesses out of it. Dayball starts 4-7. Okay, cool. I knew it was starting soon. I think there's still potential though, Deanie. Don't be too soon on that, because I thought I read somewhere where she's trying to raise some motions still that could push it to the end of April, but we'll see. Truth and Justice. Yes, I am going to be covering the Kohlberger case. Yes. In fact, I was talking about that. I will be covering that case. Yes. So that is one that you will see on here. And Lisa says, I can't see a janitor or maintenance man just ignoring the screen was out and the window was open. Even the postman will call. Exactly. I mean, look, so what I think happened is if it was on the ground and he couldn't definitively tie it to an apartment, he probably picks it up, takes it in, and he's just lazy, dude. I mean, Marty sounds like he might have been a little bit lazy. And that would make sense of why he's telling his friend that he did something that he cannot get over. Because in his opinion, if he knows he found that screen at like 6 o'clock, for all he knows, she's still alive in there, right? So if he takes the moment to investigate the screen and finds her, he saves her life. And that's what he's living with. Not killing her, but not having saved her. And that would make sense to me with that. And then if that screen is on the ground, it blows the entire prosecution theory out of the water, because their theory will not survive it. It's already kind of blown out of the water, but I mean, that would absolutely been the death knell, which is why they seem to be kind of trying to move between it's in the window and it's not, or just kind of leaving it at, well, Marty's not here, so he can't confirm one way or the other. So it'll be wherever we want to do. Well, we don't know if he threw. Well, that's what I guess that's what he said. I think. I don't know. I mean, if he did, that you're correct, Lisa. Now that you said that, hold on one second. Let me confirm this. All right, give me one moment here, guys. I'm gonna get an answer on this. Well, I know that, but I think the judge was kind of trying to insinuate to her that there was some sort of an expert that she wanted, and that they were kind of taking under advisement that she may have to waive the speedy trial if she wants this done. Now, whether maybe she'll decide she doesn't care, but it seemed to be something she thought was pretty important, because it was her ex-husband's phone, or her husband's phone, that she was wanting to have the analysis done on, and it was going to take a while. All right, so looking back at Laura Knapp's testimony, all right, so let's. All right, so give me a moment here. All right, so here we go, guys. This is now I database these trials, so I go in and look back at all the testimony and everything. So this is what was said regarding where Marty found things. So according to Laura Knapp's testimony on day 2, Marty found the screen. Laura testified that Marty told her he found the screen outside that window and specifically towards the sidewalk. She confirmed that Marty picked up the screen and brought it into his maintenance shop. When specifically asked, did Marty talk to you about a curtain or rods at all being outside the window? Laura responded, no. When asked, he didn't tell you that he threw the rods or a curtain rod and curtains back into the window? Laura again responded, no, there was no mention of a curtain rod or curtain. While Laura Knapp testified that Marty didn't mention anything about a curtain rod to her, there are other references that suggest Carmen Ashman said there's a reference to curtains and a curtain rod being thrown back into the window by Marty. Apparently that was in Marty's statement. And in Detective Robert Barnard's testimony, he mentioned that if the curtain rod was truly outside, as I was told it had been, then to him it suggested that someone had exited through the window. In the defense's opening statement, they stated that the maintenance man, Marty, found a broken into apartment with curtains and a curtain rod strewn outside that he threw back in. So while Laura Knapp testified that Marty didn't mention anything to her about curtains or a curtain rod, other testimony suggests Marty may have found a curtain rod outside and put it back through the window. This appears to be a point of contention. So there you have it. So yes, there was a lot of speculation in regards to the curtain rod and the position of the curtain rod. And I remember hearing that myself now going back. So, you know, and welcome, Truth and Justice. Yes, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. I'm glad that you like how I think. That's very nice. We don't always have to agree here, though. I encourage everyone to disagree, but respectfully, because in disagreement, as my dad used to say, and he's the one that he and I used to disagree on things, but we would always become better for it. Because we will evolve each other's thinking by disagreeing with each other, challenging each other. And even when we agree, we got to challenge each other because we can't agree on everything. But I appreciate you coming in here and joining us. But that is, so again, that's pretty big deal, right? If Marty was here and he were to say that would absolutely go to the suggestion that somebody came out of that window and this wasn't a staged crime scene. Again, with that type of stuff sitting around, they just decided they were going to just ignore that because Marty was dead, and that this jury wasn't going to accept that. And that's true, Kate, and that's why again it raises the specter of, did Marty do something? I mean, and maybe Devin didn't do anything at all, or maybe Marty was aware of what Devin did. Or again, maybe Marty didn't take the time to actually look in the room. He didn't follow his protocols. He didn't do his job. He was a lazy guy, and he just didn't do what he was supposed to do. And that could have weighed on him. Because that would have certainly potentially been something that would weigh on your mind when you find out that a young lady was in there dead and you didn't do anything about it. And you just threw the rod in or whatever and walked away, didn't contact anybody, didn't knock on any doors. And you're right, Deanie, we will never know. So now Deanie says you followed the Daybell case for the last 5 years, and it's one of those cases that I know I have peripherally followed it. I found it interesting at times. I know both of them were handily convicted. It's a very disturbing case what they did to the kids. And Lisa says that's why the state was saying the room was too dark and he wouldn't have seen her body. Yeah. Well, see, and that's where that's where it's possible, right? But here's the problem. We don't know. That's called reasonable doubt. That's why she was acquitted. So essentially, guys, that's where we land this thing. So, what a good day today is for the justice system. So be happy about it. And the Knutson family, I understand they did not get the satisfaction of a jury telling them that they had the right person, but they should be happy too, because you know what? You don't move on. You don't get peace putting the wrong person behind bars. And there is justice to be had. And that justice, I think, at this particular juncture, justice must come in the form of holding the investigators accountable for having not delivered on this case. And they could have. So justice says 2 things the state tried to hide: the screen being found outside and the curtains being found outside. Yes, they did. They tried to hide it. They tried to reframe it, and they tried to cause confusion around it. But guess what? At the end of the day, when that jury got back to that room, clearly nothing was hidden. It was clear probably a few people walked back there ready to convict, I'm sure, and they were brought forward into their thinking of the rest of the jury. And I'm proud of that jury for what they did today. So if they come across this broadcast, hats off to you. You did the right thing. You did a hard thing, because I guarantee you that community is probably not feeling great about the verdict, because I'm sure there's a lot of inherent bias that runs through that community right now because they're so close to everything. But the right verdict was delivered. Absolutely, the right verdict was delivered. So, with that said, guys, I'm going to conclude this thing. It's about almost going on 12:30, so I'm about to have to get activated on some school-related runs and things of that nature here in a few moments. So I've got to eat some lunch and get myself ready for that, because that happens about 1:30 every day. So, well, that was the other thing too, Lisa. I found it very odd about the timing of that, and that was why my original suspicion was of Marty, and then the fact he offed himself, and then you have Devin, and then you have the knife, and then you have the idea that says, well, why would the question is, which I wonder is did she damage the screen? Like, was she trying to get out of her room and he grabbed her and pulled her back on the bed and stabbed her, and that's why she had male DNA? That's a possibility. No one considered that possibility. Was she trying to get out? Did she damage the screen? And then did he cut using the knife? Did he end up cutting the screen to try to stage it? Because again, maybe he was the one staging things. So you never know. Okay, thanks. Yes, thank you guys. And thank you guys. Thanks everybody. Thank you to the members. Thank you to all the justice watchers out there, the official watchers who are supporting the channel and supporters, making what we do here, because there is some overhead. There's quite a bit of overhead that probably a lot of people don't see, but it's well worth it for what we do here. And I thank my wife for being willing to let me do this and put up with the expense and the time I have to put in to do it. But it's well worth it. Like I said, it's a thing that my dad and I were doing, and we're continuing it. And I'm going to continue to watch and provide a place for people to find these cases easy in an easy format. That's what the whole goal here is. Yes, can you find these other places? Yes. But my goal is for you to be able to see and have at your very easily watch justice unfold. Thank you, Hannah B, and very much appreciate you as well. I always appreciate the perspective you bring. Like I said, we don't have to agree, and I'm all right with that. But I like it. I like hearing the thoughts. I like hearing everything. It challenges me and gets me thinking. So thank you very much for always showing up and always being here. So keep coming back. Deanie, thank you very much. And there's my wife. Thank you, babe. And then we got Justice. He ran in a panic, leaving his knife. That's what I think too. And thank you, Deanie. I appreciate it. I love all my supporters and love all the community here that we've got going on. So it's fun, and it's exactly my family thanks all of you, because it gives me an outlet for now that I don't have my dad to talk about trials with and do stuff. I can come on here, I can chat, and I can work on putting out the content and putting out the and guys, make sure when you're watching these videos, check out the descriptions. There's a lot of stuff I put in the descriptions that's meant to be informative. As a kid, I used to love to write true crime trials that my dad would help me evaluate and write things and stuff like that. So now I kind of use the descriptions as an opportunity to put thoughts in about cases and do things and work on it. So check it out. It's meant to inform you. Even if you say, hey, you know what, you might watch just a little bit of the video, or you may have already seen it. Check it out. There's things that are being pointed out. There's time stamping. There's analysis that's coming in that might give you a little perspective. I try to put a little blurb in there about how wanting to drive the thought process in the direction that we need to be thinking is, how does this impact? And you see that now. I'm adding that the impact this testimony might have on the presumption of innocence and how this should be viewed from that prism. But then whether you agree or not. Yep. And Kate says, this is the only channel where the creator takes the time to explain the system and teaches those of us who don't understand the justice system fully. Oh, no problem. And you know what? Like I said, it's that's what it's all about. That's what this is. That's what the purpose of this is to just simply be able to, have people have a place to come to where you can learn. And again, like I said, I am not a lawyer. So, my dad was a lawyer. I've been very close to the justice system my entire life. My college focus and degree was sociology with a focus on criminal justice. So I'm educated from a 4-year degree standpoint, but I never went to law school. I went into finance and went a different direction. But um, I've been around it. I mean, I've been around. I've seen the inner workings of law of the thing. I've been sitting in there. I've sat in there, like I said, as a kid. I have vivid memories of sitting in West Virginia is a little different. You saw it in the Cochran case. I was sitting in there with my dad's clients who were not out on bond. We were sitting in the room and I'm talking to them and we're eating hot dogs from the hot dog stand down there and I'm talking to these people and, you know, realizing that they're normal people. I mean, it was a very unique situation watching my dad nervous as we're waiting on jury verdicts and sitting there on school nights as we're there for some of the most important cases in my community. And there I was behind the scenes. I can remember I was spending my summers going to trials with my dad. And I remember going to one particular trial and getting a tour. And in fact, funny thing was I ended up doing a loan for one of these police officers later in life. He gave me a big tour of the local jail, took me in, locked me in the jail cell. And this was all during trial. And, the judge had him give me a personal tour and walk me through. And, I got all sorts of behind the scenes access because I was always around the courthouses and always there watching. And now I'm here sharing that experience. So I have a unique perspective to bring in terms of understanding it and having talked to, in my opinion, the greatest legal mind none of you will ever know because he's passed on. I got a front row seat of just a plethora of legal knowledge and just amazing amount of legal knowledge. So, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Deanie, and thank you, Kate. I will do so. She's actually listening now, so she sees. So you just thanked her. I'll put it up on the screen. So, but I thank you guys all for coming in because if you guys didn't watch, you know what? But I'd still be here. I remember when I was talking to nobody or watching nobody, I sat out here and just kept going because I said, you know what? This is something that I enjoy doing. So, and I enjoy watching. So it's great that I can do this and have people actually out here talking with me. I can remember doing lives when I was doing the Justice Watch live podcast at the end, which was my goal at that time was like do this at the end of every day of these live trials. But of course, due to my kids and bath times and everything else, I wasn't getting started till like 11:30, 12 o'clock. And then my wife promptly put an end to that because I was staying up. I wasn't getting started till 11:30. And somewhere around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I was ending my pod. If you go back to you can find my podcast list. You'll see several of them. And I was up till 2:33, 4 in the morning. And I wasn't getting any sleep because then I'm waking up to take the kids into school and get started with my day. And I'm getting 3-4 hours of sleep. And she finally said, we're changing that. You got to do something different. So we had to reconfigure. But, it's fun stuff. So I appreciate all of you. And be on the lookout. I will be releasing. I have a backlog of stuff. I still have a lot of things to release on the Todd Mullis case, which, by the way, for those of you wondering, I got a question. I have it on my calendar. I believe it's April 2nd. They will be in court. They will be in court to unveil the decision. We're going to get to see it. So that'll be there. Well, thank you, Justice. I appreciate that. Very much appreciate that. So be on the lookout for that. I will have it up. I'm quite certain it'll be covered. So, and that they'll have cameras back in the court for that. But in the meantime, I intend to hopefully get the rest of that hearing out and the rest of the testimony out and broken down for everybody in anticipation because I'm hoping he gets another trial because I remember watching his trial. Because I used to be on the road quite a bit. So I used to watch, not really watch, but listen to trials while I was driving around and traveling around for business and everything. And I'd call my wife up and, talk about stuff. And I'd start talking to her about a trial I was watching. She'd be like, what are you talking about? So I'd call my dad and he'd not talk. But anyways, that's coming up. So there'll be stuff coming out on that. I've got lots of Sementilli stuff to release still. And the verdict, of course, I'm going to put out here in a few minutes of this case. So anyways, with that said, guys, I'm going to jump off here. I appreciate everyone. And until we talk again, guys, let justice prevail. And I'll be back very shortly. And also do remember Sementilli case re-begins on Friday at 12:30. See you guys then.